Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to yet another exciting new review. This time it's a very popular locomotive, or at least it was very popular when I put her in the Lost Locomotives running day, which I did a few weeks ago now, and she did seem to be very popular there, so this is a review I wanted to do for you guys. And of course it's the 060 tank engine, which is a Class E2 from the LBSC, which stands for the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway, which is obviously a pre-grouping railway. The engines were designed by Lawson Billington and they first appeared in 1913, and a total of only 10 were produced for shunting or for short distance passenger work. All 10 of the locos were withdrawn between 1961 and 1963, and after which they were all scrapped, which is very sad. And as you know, you would have guessed from the Lost Locomotives video, there are none of them left, which is a terrible shame. But still, let's take a look at Hornby's model, and here it is. And it's quite an old style model. I believe they were manufactured from sort of mid-70s to the mid-80s. But I do really like this locomotive. It is really very cute, I suppose. And there is another special reason, which I'm sure most of you will know as well, but we'll get onto that in a little while. So let's take a look at the box. You've got the LBSC Class E2 060T, which of course stands for tank, and you've got what I assume is the crest for the LBSC there, which is a really nice thing to include. And we'll look at this card in a little bit more detail in a little while when we get the box open, because I do miss these cards actually. They were really nice. Let's take a look at the end of the box, which I find is very interesting. Of course you've got the running, well, not the running number, it's the catalogue number, isn't it, which is R353 LBSC 060T Loco. Very informal. And the thing I found interesting was the price there, as you can see. Model line, which I assume was a model shop perhaps, £11.98, and of course that's different money to what we're used to now. It would be worth a bit more. At the moment you can get these for about £20 on eBay. This is how much this one cost, and it's in mint condition and it's boxed, so really not very expensive, but I'm sure you're not interested in all of that just yet. So let's get the box open and let's show you this lovely loco. So let's get it out, and this is one of the old Hornby style boxes and packaging. There's the loco. Well, no, that's not the loco. This is the card I was talking to you about, and as you can see, it says one of a series of specially commissioned illustrations of locomotives. So I don't know. It does say artist's interpretation of prototype, so maybe that's a way of saying this might not be completely accurate, but still a really nice thing to include, this card, which is nice. And we've also got in this box, which is still intact, oh, and there's the logo, by the way, very nice. We'll get her out in a second, but I must say I do really like these Locomotive Lubrication and Maintenance chart. It's got a special name. Let's get this open, and it's massive, so I apologise if I don't get this in the shot very well. But look, it does cater for most locos, it seems. There's the 060s, 040s, all sorts, the XO3 motor there and the ring-filled motor. There's even a 9F there, which is quite interesting. But it features quite a lot, so it does blanket over lots of different locomotives. And it says 1979 in the top corner, which may be a good indication of the date. I think so, that seems reasonable. But yeah, it's really nicely done, really nicely printed. As you can see, there's a real quality about it. And I do like looking through these sheets. It's a bit nerdy, but I do like looking through them. I find it very interesting. Anyway, let's get the loco out, and of course there is no holes or anything in the back, but it isn't too much of a snug fit, so let's take it out, put the packaging to one side, and there it is, a lovely LBSC 060. And of course you may know that Thomas the tank engine was eventually based on this locomotive, and I believe Hornby used this body, well, not this brown body, but a modified version of this body to use in their early Thomas models, and really nice it is too, but looking at it in this livery, it's completely unrecognisable as Thomas, really. Of course, you know, if you look closely, like the water tanks and the, you know, the various features are quite typical of Thomas, and when you think of it like that you think, oh yes, of course, but I don't think it's too noticeable when you think about it. But still, enough chitter chatter, let's put her up onto the white background and I'll give you a bit of a closer look, and we'll take a look at some of the detail, and this really is a nice logo, so let's get on with it. Alright, so there she is on the white background then, looking very, very smart indeed, and I think I've already said this before. I do find these really smart looking, and just look what a beautiful loco this is. And I believe in fact that this model was based on the first series of the E2 locomotive. And I say that because the first series came out and it was deemed very successful, except for the fact that the water tanks on the sides were deemed inadequate basically. And by the time the second series were produced, in real life that is, the water tanks were extended a little bit further this way towards the smoke box. And I don't know if there's any pictures of that. I'll try and find one, but if not, then no cigar. But it does look completely different in fact with the longer water tanks, which is completely not like Thomas. But then again, I might be wrong. Who knows? Maybe Thomas was designed on the second one, but to me, this series looks like Thomas to me. So, yep, that's pretty cool. So, you know, 1970s, mid-1970s, it's not going to have a terrible amount of detail on it. Having said that, the detail is perhaps a little bit better than some of the models in the era. But first let's take a look at the paint job. Of course it's in this lovely sort of chocolatey brown livery. I'm not too sure if it has an official name, more than likely it does. But it is made very, very interesting looking, I think, by the yellow trim, which of course goes along the base of the locomotive there, over the boiler and round all the text, the running number 2 of course, which is 100. And yeah, let's take a look at the separately fitted parts then. There's not an awful lot of them, but there's perhaps more than is normal for a loco of this sort of age. First of all, you've got the whistle on the top, which is made of, well, copper probably, which looks very nice up there, and it does look very delicate, but it's still there, so I've not broken it off just yet. And there's also a fair share of handrails there towards the smoke box, and on the front of the smoke box door as well, which is quite a nice touch, and it is a little bit of a contrast to the black. There's also a fair bit of moulded work as well, which isn't painted or anything, but it does help to bring it alive a little bit. On the front of the tanks there, I assume that's something to do with the plumbing. And the safety valves there protrude quite nicely, and they're quite nicely moulded. Of course, the LBSC text does look very elegant there in the yellow, circled by the double yellow line, which does look very smart, I think. And we've already looked at the cab a little bit, but as you can see there, the number 100 on the side. And on the inside there is, in fact, cab detail, which is a big surprise, because as you might know, most of the locos that used to have these sort of XO3/XO4 motors inside them, they didn't have any cab detail because that's where the motor would sit. But on this example, the motor in fact sits at this end, towards the smoke box, which means that there is plenty of space for cab detail inside the cab, which is wonderful. Not that you can really see it too well, but it is there, which is very nice. And there aren't any glazed windows or anything on the front there, but on the back you have got that quite nice grille effect, as you can see, which is pretty nice looking. The coal is really very simple. It's basically railroad coal, isn't it? But you know, it's such a small area, you really don't notice it too much. So let's just have a little recap then. You haven't got sprung buffers or anything because this is an older model, and that's quite usual. The whole thing is completely without rivets basically, but not that that's a particularly bad thing. Perhaps that's how they were in real life, or perhaps it was just a way of producing the locos more cost effectively. But certainly it's a very smart looking locomotive, and you know, of course it's not the best in terms of detail. And compared with modern locomotives, of course, it is completely inferior. But for the time, I think the detail on this is really pretty good. And as you can see, regardless of detail, it just looks very elegant, doesn't it? And I think that's the main thing. So anyway, hopefully you've had a good close look at her then, and she is lovely, as you can see. But I suppose we ought to move on to the part that we all enjoy, which is the running session. So I'll get her maybe some freight, or maybe some coaches, I'm not sure yet. I think it'll be freight because I chose coaches last time, didn't I? So yeah, we'll get her down onto the railway and we'll see how she performs then, shall we? So there she is then, sitting on the line, looking very, very smart, as many locos often do. We'll talk about her performance in just a second, but first I thought I'd show you what else is on the railway. She's going to be pulling a rake of mixed freight. There's some wagons and some milk wagons if you like, and some low loaders and a brake van on the end there. And on the other line there is my pannier tank, which is number 8751, another 060, and she's actually going to be pulling also mixed freight, but every item on that train is new. I bought that the other week for about £11, the whole rake was, so really, really nice in fact. Some of it I've got already, but some of it I haven't. And I'm particularly pleased with the Great Western Brake Van, because that was a gap in my collection. But still, you'll see all that going in a second. So first let's talk about the E2. She does hold together very nicely on the rails, but she's not a massive puller because she's just very light. The Loco really does not weigh very much at all. Which means, you know, she struggles to pull the heavier loads, but it's not too much of an issue. She does have an XO3 motor in there, whereas the pannier tank has an XO4. So she is pretty, you know, the XO3 motors, I do like them, and they are very reliable. Considering she's got an XO3, she is quite quiet, so let's give her a little bit of a crawl forwards and backwards. You can see that really is a very, very good crawl speed for an XO3. It's one of the best XO3 crawlers I have. A little bit creaky going backwards, but certainly not bad. And we're going to couple up to this freight train in just a second. In fact, we'll do it now. So throw her into reverse, and here she goes then to couple to that end wagon. Nice and steady does it. Okay, and she hasn't got it because this wagon's got a bit of a broken coupling on it, but that seems alright. Push it back a bit. There we go. And let's give her a bit of a gander then, shall we? Let's get her running. It's a good freight speed. Hopefully she'll pull it. Yes. Not too heavy, only 7 or 8 items on there. Let's see. 6, 7, 8, about 9 items, so not bad. Let's get the pannier tank up and running too then. And I admit the pannier tank's only running today because I wanted an excuse to run that new Great Western Brake Van, so there you have it. And there goes the E2, looking very smart. Yep, working very well, nice and smooth as you can see. Well, those two seem to be enjoying themselves anyway, so while they do, I thought I would share with you the way I rated this locomotive. First of all, detail. The detail is really actually not bad at all, so I give it 7 out of 10. It would have got a little more if it had rivets and that sort of thing, but you know, no rivets is a bit of a shame. And of course, none of these ratings are going to be relative to modern locomotives, because of course, compared with say Hornby's J50, the detail on this would be, say, 4 out of 10. But I'm doing these ratings in comparison to other locos that were around at the time. So, compared to the other locos Hornby made in the 70s, the detail is pretty good. And same with performance, really. The loco is a little bit light, which means she can't pull too much. But having said that, the motor is really quite good. Obviously, it's an XO3. And it is pretty quiet and smooth. But unfortunately, also, the wheel set is driven from the back wheels, which in some cases can cause the locomotive to jam if it's not been serviced for a long time. I've never had that happen to this loco, but certainly others that I've seen have done that occasionally, just as a result of being driven from the back. But still, pretty good performance. Character, of course, it's Thomas, and the reason it was probably chosen for Thomas is because it really does have such character. So yeah, the E2 in real life has massive character, but of course Hornby's interpretation of it is also full of character, so really, really lovely character. Build quality, 9 out of 10. It really is a very well built locomotive. None of the details snapped off. It seems to hold itself together really well. The only problem is sometimes the front buffer beam has a tendency to crack when you're taking the body off, because it is quite a wrestling match trying to get the body off sometimes. But if you're careful, there's no reason why it should break. So very good build quality. So value then, which is a new category I've added. I do think the value of this locomotive now is really very good. I got mine for about 20 quid, and that seems to be about the going rate on eBay. £20, boxed, mint condition. You really can't go wrong. You couldn't get a modern locomotive for that sort of price. So really, really good value. So overall, a very lovely loco, lots of detail for its age. Not a bad performer either, a very, very lovely model, full of character. So 8 out of 10 overall. Yeah, cool. So enjoy these two running for a little bit longer then. Alright then everybody, well that's just about all I've got to show you. I really hope you enjoyed seeing the E2 here, or Thomas as it might have been known by some of you. If you did enjoy the video, please feel free to leave a like or even a comment, just to let me know if you like the video or not, or if you just want to have a chat. Either's fine by me. Also, you could check out the Facebook and Twitter pages too if you wanted to, and they're at facebook.com/samstrains or twitter.com/samstrains. For now guys, it's been really nice to have your company as always, and I hope to see you right back here in the near future. So thanks for watching once again, and I'll see you all soon. Cheers everybody.